Okinawa es el hogar de enormes bases americanas. Innumerables incursiones aéreas salen de aquí, irritando considerablemente a China y a Corea del Norte. Algunos expertos dicen que la Tercera Guerra Mundial podría empezar aquí. Okinawa era un reino independiente, pero este siglo fue colonizado por Estados Unidos y por Japón. Durante algún tiempo parecía que Japón era un mal menor, pero ahora tiene de nuevo un gobierno extremadamente conservador y pro-occidental. Supuestamente el gobernador de Okinawa iba a presionar para sacar las bases estadounidenses de la isla, pero a causa de presiones de Tokio traicionó a su propia gente y ahora están a punto de permanecer aquí. Las protestas están sacudiendo la isla mientras China y Corea del Norte están perdiendo la paciencia con dos poderes que ya han desvalijado Asia en demasiadas ocasiones. Okinawa, conocido como un paraíso tropical, puede convertirse en un peón principal del juego postcolonial.
Japan has a large deployment of American troops, American bases, American equipment. Most of those forces have been used over the years in Korea, 1950, 1953, the Vietnam War, and all of the major wars that America has fought in this region or close to this region over the years. They have used Okinawa as a deployment and Japan as a deployment base.
After World War II, Okinawa was governed directly by the U.S. military. Had really a military government for many years, and that was so bad that the Okinawans persuaded themselves that their old colonizer was a better deal. Japan had the peace constitution that seemed to have reformed, and so many Okinawans persuaded themselves that really they were Japanese.
Okinawa hosts about 75% of the troops and facilities, American troops and American facilities in Japan. It's out of sight and out of mind of most of the Japanese people on the mainland. Okinawa is 1,000 miles away from Tokyo, from the capital. If you talk to Okinawans, they're angry and disappointed that for over 60 years now they've been asked to essentially shoulder the American-Japanese alliance, military alliance, by putting up with these bases all these years and all that brings, including over the years some quite serious crimes committed by the U.S. military, the potential for accidents, aircraft accidents and so on, and just the nuisance of having this, very small island, the main island of Okinawa, occupied by a large number of bases. About 20%, 19% of the main island is occupied by these bases. The military alliance with America is also accompanied by what critics would say is a subservient attitude towards Washington in general. Japan rarely bucks against what Washington wishes on foreign policy. They usually work hand in hand.
I'm a mayor of Okinawa City.
Oh, you are a mayor of...
I was.
You were?
Yeah.
You want to close this base here, right?
Yes.
You don't want it to move here. Why? What is the... can you tell me all the things about the base?
This the lousy sounds and crashing. 68 years ago, now Battle of Okinawa was fight here and there in 3 months, and so the U.S. Army occupied Okinawa land, and they built many huge bases in Okinawa, and they are still now here.
this island or these islands are known as Okinawa Islands, but Okinawa Prefecture, which is a part of Japan, but Okinawa used to be an independent kingdom, independent country back then, known as Ryukyu Kingdom. And the land is colonized, our mind is colonized.
Because we think that U.S. imperialism uses Japanese colonialism on us. So the Japanese government make a treaty with a security treaty with the United States, and then United States uses Japanese government to force us the U.S. bases. And like Tomochi-san tried to explain that we are colonized and to believe that we are Japanese, and so in our mind we have a Japanese way of thinking.
Okinawans are part of Chinese civilization. You've seen their grave sites resemble Chinese. So many elements of their culture are Chinese. Shuri was the castle of the Shuri dynasty, the kings that for that particular location for hundreds of years paid tribute, dual tribute, one tribute to China, one tribute to Japan, maintaining their independence over hundreds and hundreds of years. Here was the Japanese Imperial Army headquarters. Needless to say, the American invaders targeted the Shuri castle, symbol of the Okinawan kingdom, and destroyed it, literally. Stone by stone. What you see today as a tourist is a total reconstruction from nothing. It's sad the way that Okinawan culture and history was obliterated.
Japón puede ser un aliado de Estados Unidos, pero quizás muchos ciudadanos de Okinawa no se sientan aliados de ninguna de las dos potencias. Se ven a ellos mismos como víctimas. Y el hecho de que las bases estadounidenses hayan sido construidas en tierra robada no hace sino echar más leña al fuego.
これはね、戦争中、戦争の最中で作られた軍事基地です。ですから戦争が終わって帰ってみたら、自分の住む場所も耕す畑も全部軍事基地になってたですね。生活が押し出されてしまった人々は。
So basically they had stolen the land from the people of Okinawa.
そうです、終わったんですね。
They used the method that's called in Okinawa bulldozers and rifles. They would come into a township with a line of GIs carrying rifles, and behind them a row of bulldozers, and drive out the people and bulldoze the houses down and take it over for a base. Landowners were given no compensation. There was the first big movement in post-war Okinawa was to get rent paid to the owners. And now they are paid. I think they're paid by Japanese taxpayers' money, not U.S. money.
Okinawa 戦の図というのはね、要するに広島で原爆を体験した丸木都市という画家が原爆の絵を描きました。大きな15枚描いたんですね。で描いてもね、今度のアジア太平洋戦争の真実をもう一つ描いたような気がしない。その真実を描くためには世界で起こっている地上戦というものを唯一体験した沖縄の人々の戦争体験に学ぶ必要があるということで、沖縄戦についてしっかり研究をして沖にやってきて、そして描いたのが沖縄戦の図です。でそれを徹底して沖縄戦に研究して書かれて、そして沖縄の人々に来たら、沖縄戦生き残った私はここで生き残りましたという現場に行ってですね、そしてその証言を聞くんですね。で人々の記憶を証言によって書くという意識ですね。それを徹底して吟味しながら書きました。正確に情報に基づいて書くという意識ですね。
このシンボルの意味って何でしょうか。
これはね、これが沖縄で、これはサンゴ礁の石がポンとありますけどね。これサンゴ礁は沖縄ウルマ島というんです。昔古いウルマ島。ウルマ島でウルというのはサンゴというんです。まあサンゴ礁広い空間、ウルマ島ですね。でウルマ島これですね。で日本が入ってしまって、で日本とアメリカの、軍事同盟ですねが書かれています。象徴的に。
Well, people living in Okinawa or Okinawan people understand and know that the military base is so dangerous and we don't need that.
For mainland Japan, Okinawa is a tourist resort, a destination, a playground, and not on their minds, not in their calculus at all. And there's probably an element of condescension. I wouldn't say racism, but a kind of condescension between mainlanders and Okinawans historically. And I think it still exists as well.
Análisis político de noticias internacionales en pleno desarrollo, conducido por el periodista y corresponsal de guerra Walter Martínez.
Cualquiera sea la realidad, hoy se la vamos a mostrar.
Dossier, nuevo horario, de lunes a viernes, solo por TeleSUR.
Does she think it's dangerous?
なんか危険だと思いますか？
ここに住んでるわけじゃないからそういう危機感はないけど。
can see a lot of bases just next to this campus, and you have a lot of fences, and we feel always surrounded by fences.
It's not the island paradise that the travel posters claim. There's a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, many things to be sad and depressed about.
La existencia de las bases militares no contribuye especialmente a la economía de Okinawa. Si acaso, hace que la gente dependa de trabajo no muy deseables vinculados a la presencia de miles de marines estadounidenses. Hoy en día, Okinawa es la prefectura más pobre de Japón, con numerosos problemas sociales.
81% of the Japanese public supports the Japan-U.S. Security Treaty, but they want those bases in Okinawa.
They want to build a huge air base here in 10 years.
What will happen to Haneko if they are going to build the base here? Is it going to destroy environment? What will happen?
Yes, Haneko and Okinawa is a very beautiful sea. But they don't care. Japanese government and the U.S. government don't care those natures.
What does he think will happen now?
これからどうなると思いますか？
政治的には、日本政府が沖縄への基地建設を進めていくとは思うんですけど、沖縄の県民はやはりなんとかそれを止めていくように、動いていくと思います。力強いものがあります。
怒りが込み上げて大きい声になったんでしょう。みんなそうだと思います。
中井町と言わないでいい。中井までいい。
中井までいい。
そうだよ。
中井町と言うなという
玉をつけていること
をおっしゃっている市民の方もいます。みんなわじわじしてるわけですよ。言えば聞きようがあるんですが、あんたの言っていることは支離滅裂で全く理解ができない。コスプレを沖縄から追い出すための行動です。マリーンダースアウトオブ沖縄アウトオブ沖縄マリーンゴーホーアウトオブ沖縄。
Okinawans feel that they were used as a buffer between the Americans and the mainland. They were sacrificed by the mainland as a way of slowing down the American forces. And a third of the population of the island died in that awful battle, the Battle of Okinawa, of course, which began in March 1945.
Offshore, supporting units of our fleet execute fire missions against the Naha area.
Okinawans love to go out drinking together, especially the men, and stay up very late and sit around drinking Okinawan awamori and exchanging stories of the bases and their treatment by Japanese. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, somebody would pound their fist on the table and say, "Independence, that's the only solution." And everybody would say, "Yes, yes." And then the next morning, everybody would just get up and go to work, and that was the end of it. But last year, a new independence research group was started by young academics.
We have to study the current situation. We have to study the history, and we have to study what is going on in Okinawa, in Japan, in Asia, in the world. That's why we established the association, academic association, that is the Association of Comprehensive Studies of Independence of Lutherans, where we can learn the history, learn the situation, and learn the issues.
Do you think it is practically possible? Is it legally possible for Okinawa to become independent?
I believe so.
The Constitution, of course, was written by the Americans, and they I don't believe they ever countenanced a dismemberment. So Okinawa has no legal grounds within Japanese constitutional law to secede. There's no right of secession from the state.
Now many people have that kind of desire in the deep inside of them, but I think it's it takes a little more time to come up that desire, because many people first they are very shocked, and now they are fighting not to lose their confidence.
Are you hopeful? Are you optimistic?
Yeah, I have to.
La lucha por la independencia llega en el momento en el que Japón está aumentando sus gastos militares y está lista para revisar y posiblemente modificar su pacífica constitución postguerra. Tokio está provocando a China abiertamente. Algunos dicen que por sí mismo y otros que de parte de los aliados occidentales. Y Okinawa está haciendo frente a un peligro creciente. Si Occidente ataca a China o si Japón cruza la línea y provoca a China, las represalias estarán probablemente dirigidas contra las bases localizadas en suelo de Okinawa.
Well, Abe comes from a very different political tradition. He is a staunch nationalist and believes that Japan must show a strong face to China. And part of that strong face will be building up Japan's military. Japan's military spending was declining for many years. He announced as soon as he came to office the first increase in military spending in a decade.
Okinawa hosts one of the largest U.S. military bases in the archipelago. And for 60 years, the Chinese have lived with the status quo. Actually, because they've perceived the American presence as a staying hand upon the revival of Japanese militarism. But that all changed when the Abe government nationalized the Senkaku Dairyu Islands. The status quo has changed because now Japan declares there is no dispute over these so-called disputed islands. Therefore, the Tokyo government has upped the ante, has angered China. China is indignant with this change of the status quo.
What makes us worried about Japan and the U.S. make a war near us or on our island or the sea very near us? We don't want them to make a war, but we are very afraid that they make war in the territory, in our territory. I mean, in Okinawa, and to sacrifice us.
When you meet your friends, your colleagues, when you go for dinner, when you go to have a coffee, does this issue come up between your colleagues, between professors?
It's very to talk about that issue and among them. Even I do have a colleague, Chinese colleague, but we don't talk about that stuff.
Having a military basis on our island means we will be one of the first target during the war, and Okinawan people already had experience of that during the World War II, during the Battle of Okinawa. That's why a lot of people in Okinawa are trying to get rid of military bases.
Ordinary Okinawan people probably do not debate these geopolitical factors, which are quite complex. But they do, and I'm sure they understand that they are prime targets if any conflict did develop. There would be severe collateral damage with any clash in the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands, intentional or accidental. Either way, many people could be hurt. And there are even worse scenarios I could think about if a spark sparked a conflict, a naval or aerial conflict. Okinawans would be the first to suffer in this geopolitical game.
Out of Okinawa. Marines, go home. Out of Okinawa.
As an American, ultimately, I wish that America would remove itself from the Western Pacific and give up its empire of bases around the world. I would be much happier if my home country was not an empire.
Okinawa podría no obtener su independencia a corto plazo, pero la oposición a las bases está creciendo. Y tanto los asiáticos como el resto del mundo son conscientes del tremendo peligro que procede de los aeropuertos dotados con armas nucleares y aeronaves traídas para controlar y quizás destruir al mundo.